Good morning. Thank you for joining us. We know you've gotten used to our Sunday morning services, but this morning we have something a little bit different for you. A couple of weeks ago, we hosted the Bladensburg Police and their panel, Bridging the Gap Between the Police and the Community. So that is what we're going to have and be sharing with you this morning. We hope you enjoy. As a reminder, we are meeting here on Sunday mornings at 9:45 and 11 a.m., 4301 Emerson Road, Bladensburg, Maryland. If you're feeling comfortable and healthy, we would like to ask and let you know that you're welcome to join us. We will be wearing masks and practicing social distancing. Again, we have this panel for you and we hope you enjoy. God bless.
All right, good evening. Thank you for your patience and welcome to tonight's community forum. As the title says, on the title of the event, we're here to bridge the gap between our community as well as our law enforcement partners, our community stakeholders, and our residents. And that's what tonight is all about, having candid conversations about moving our community forward as we work together. We can't deny the negative things that we're seeing all over the news, all over this country as it relates to law enforcement and people of color. But it's our job to make sure that we work together, not just from a policy standpoint, but also from a relationship and trust building standpoint, that we come together and build strong relationships, have open conversations and really positive dialogues with one another and work together to make the town of Bladensburg better. So with that, I will turn things over, and I'm sorry, I'm Mayor James for the town of Bladensburg, and again, just welcome you to the program. But I also want to thank Pastor Walter Smith for opening his doors to allow us to film this conversation here tonight. Due to the pandemic, we can't have tons of people in the building, but we felt that it was smart to just keep you all safe watching online, filming this and projecting it out, again, in an effort to continue the dialogue and conversation to bring us all together, bridging the gap and building strong relationships. So with that, I'll turn it over to Pastor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor James. Let me just communicate that when I was asked to host this forum, I was just elated because of the brief history that I have here in Bladensburg, in this community, since the early part of this year, being hired as a pastor here at this church, seeing the activism that's going on in the community, the participation from the police department and the mayor's office, along with faith-based communities and people in the community as well, coming together. It has been a joy to share in that and to participate in that. And so I'm just really excited to be here and to be a part of this discussion. So thank you all for being here. This is just a privilege for us to expand this conversation. That's obviously a national conversation, but we want to talk about our immediate context tonight, the town of Bladensburg, Prince George's County in particular, and what we can do to better the relationship between the community and the police force, along with the mayor's office, faith-based communities, and just the community alike. And so we have some questions, tangible questions. We have some questions from Facebook Live, so we'll try to see if we can get those questions streamed in as well. We have some people here that are a part of the community that want to also be a part of this dialogue. So I will mix this up a little bit, if that's okay with you guys. Everybody good? Everybody comfortable?
Oh, yeah.
All right, great. And so I'm just going to start with some basic questions, and I'm going to start with the Chief of Police. And the first question that I want to pose to you is, what do you think are the immediate concerns with the police department and the community of Bladensburg as of now?
That's an excellent question, Chief Collington, Bladensburg Police. I think, number one, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to thank you, Pastor, for again opening up your doors for us. And thank my staff for showing up, and as well as the community and the mayor for being here as well. But I think some of the main challenges that we have affecting the community, some of the concerns they have, one is, number one, their safety. What should happen to them if they have any interaction with law enforcement? And we want to, here in Bladensburg, we want to make sure that we are respecting the constitutional rights of all of our residents here in town. I think the other concern is, especially with the African American Latino family, is when their children or husband or wives or themselves go out in the public, where they make it back home, where they be stopped by the police, be mistreated, things like that. So what I say to that point is, here in Bladensburg, I think we have a very robust community outreach. We have very good relationships with our community. I think our police officers do a very good job, fantastic job of reaching out and engaging, because most of the time when people have interaction with the police, it's when they're in a crisis. So what we want to do is change that narrative that we have contact once there's a crisis. We want to be proactive and we want to go out. So we want to relieve some of the stressors that the community has when it comes to their safety. Can they trust the police? And the other part for the police is we want to make sure that respect is a two-way thing. It's reciprocated back and forth. And we want to make sure that when we come out and have an interaction, that we're safe. We want to make it home as well. We have officers that, I won't say that they are a little hesitant in doing their job, but the concerns they have is, are they going to get complaints? Are they going to, be in court? Are they going to be arrested? So these are very serious concerns that for law enforcement, what they have. And what I'm proud about our police officers is they do go out. They go that extra mile. We just had a very catastrophic fast flood on September the 10th. And I watched my staff put their safety second and the community's safety first. And they went out and they rescued people from cars and homes and things like that.
Right.
So our officers, I say here in Bladensburg, I can't speak about what's going on around the country. And a lot of the interactions that they have, sometimes it stems around training that they receive. And it's different regionally around the country. But I say here, in our police officers, I'm very comfortable when I go home in the evening, that they are representing the police department in the utmost professional manner, and that they are out here because they come to work every day. They put this uniform on.
Right.
And I look, again, we're dealing with COVID-19. So that's another dynamic that we have to deal with, the pandemic. And these officers come to work every day, our staff, they put the uniform on, they come. As a chief, if you're asking me what my concerns are the health and wellness of my officers. Are they in the right mindset when they come to work? Because of everything that's going on. They're depressed sometimes when they come in because of the negativity that's being streamed out about police, because not all police are bad police.
Chief, can I deal with that for a quick second? I
Yes,
think
sir.
It's important that you brought that up. There's a word that's being thrown around in this narrative, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's about who can control the narrative. And you made mention to training being essential when it comes to how the police actually deal with the community. Mm-hmm. And that differs depending on city, state, county. And so it's a variety of different tactics that maybe are being taught to different police forces. Mm-hmm. One thing that I appreciate about the panel is we have some diversity here. So we have a female, we have 2 white officers, 3 black officers, mm-hmm. We have a member of the community here. And so I want all of your input on this as well. When it comes to words that are being used in the dialogue today, words like police reform, narrative, are these things important, and is tactics one of the biggest issues? Because what we're hearing is it is the tactics that are being used with African Americans, disproportionately black and brown neighborhoods. I want to pose this to the 2 white officers. What do you think about the words police reform, tactics, and policing in black and brown communities? And as a white officer, how does this affect you mentally? And what is your everyday mode going into work, knowing that this is a vital issue today?
Lieutenant Silvers, Bladensburg Police.
Thank you, Lieutenant Silver.
I've been in police for 31 years. So I recently came here from Anne Arundel County Police. I lateraled over probably a month ago. Prior to that, I was retired sergeant, Prince George's County Police. And prior to that, I was in Baltimore City. So I've ran the gamut of, the diversity. And basically, professional policing is not biased. You give everybody professional policing, based on, the call you're going to, the incident you're handling. And if we have that, then we get the community trust. And once you get the community trust, then you have policing back to the way it was back in the day, where you had your foot patrolman. He knew everybody on that street, and that's what we have to get back to.
Okay, so more community policing?
Yes, absolutely.
People being familiar with the neighborhoods that they're policing.
So when, years ago, you had foot beats. And again, you had your foot patrolmen that would go out. They knew everybody. Then we implemented the cars. So that took a little bit of the community aspect away from it. The COPS program is very good. We have our community action team. They're very involved in the community. So, it's nothing for you to stop and say hi to somebody when you're driving that cruiser. But it's somewhere down the road, we got away from that. We need to get back to that. That will build community trust. That will help the community, with the interaction between us and the police. A little more personable and, in the communities, playing ball with a kid. It's just, we'll get back to it. We're just going through a bad time right now, and we'll weather the storm. It comes in waves. And like I said, the police will always get the community's trust back. It's just going to take time.
Okay. Does anybody else want to comment on that about what's proactively being done right now as far as Bladensburg and their interactions with the community?
Oh, well,
Yes.
I'm Corporal Brown. I am the supervisor of the community action team here at Bladensburg Police Department. And we have a lot of events that's coming up, a lot of stuff that we have in the making due to COVID. We was able to push a lot of it out. We had to switch up and do a lot of virtual events, but we have our community police academy that's going to start up next month, and we would like everyone from the community to be involved in this, to see what it's like to be a police officer, to see what we go through day by day. We are also into, before COVID, we were into the schools, walking around. We knew the students' names, and it's an amazing feeling going into a cafeteria and the students are just screaming and yelling for you. It makes us feel like we are superstars, just walking inside a classroom. The classroom go wild. They want to talk to us, give us high fives and all that. That is all great. We love this Bladensburg community. We do a lot of events, Halloween events, events around Christmas time. So we have a lot of events that we do for the community to build that trust, to build that relationship. And that's not just the community action team, but that's the department as a whole. Yeah. We may organize it, but we count on the department, the rest of the officers, to come and help us out. And we have no problem with doing that.
Great. I think it would be, I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't address one of the biggest elephants in the room, and that is the actual distrust of policing in these communities. And so I want to talk to a member of the community, this young lady right here, and I want to ask you, what is your personal opinion about policing in the community? What are your thoughts about it? Is it positive? Is it negative? And if so, what can be done in your estimation to rectify the relationship between the two?
Hi, my name is Vivian Ebisike. So I believe that in the community of Bladensburg, it's amazing. Like, the town of Bladensburg, the police department, it does a lot for the community, as was said before. I have a personal relationship with the police, which is why I can say that they do an amazing, impeccable job with their relationship with the community. However, on like a national scale, like in bigger cities like Atlanta or like New York and LA, it's a bit of a issue because, let's just be honest, it's bigger. It's going, the police departments aren't trying to be more, they aren't trying to interact with the members of the community like that, especially in marginalized neighborhoods for obvious reasons. But I feel like in order for us to get like that bond together between the police and the community, it's doing what the town of Bladensburg is doing, which is holding more events, which is trying to be more like active in the citizen space, be more in the citizen spaces, making sure that like the citizens know them and things of that nature, so that they'll know like, hey, the police are human. There's like some humanity to them, and they're not seen as like what like the media kind of portrays them to be, which are like these monsters who just like come after and just anybody out of just because of the color of their skin, which is like what happens occasionally, but that's what we should do. It's basically more community policing instead of like what the police are doing now, which is having a narrow focus on fighting crime.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Great. So perception is everything, and interaction with the police has a lot to do with the first initial moments of the encounter, and they can be tense, and it's hard to really communicate with someone that you don't know, and there could be potential crime or nothing at all. And so perception has also been an issue in the African American community. Let me give you an example, right? I'm all tatted up, okay? I could be perceived as a threat because of my outer appearance, right? I'm a pastor of this church. Nobody would ever know that unless I told you. I'm educated. Nobody would ever know that unless you had a conversation with me or I told you. And so perception could, in some instances, cause for a really tense situation. So for both parties to be safe, let me get a female's perspective. Is it Ramirez?
Yes, sir.
What would you, how would you communicate with the community? Someone who's probably afraid to have interactions with the police, and maybe it's because of perception of the police and their interactions with young African American males. What's the best way to establish a less tense environment when, say, somebody's getting pulled over who looks like me?
So I'm Corporal Ramirez with the Bladensburg Police Department. Been here for 7 years, and there's a two-part to this. So with all my 7 years of being here, I've been raised in Bladensburg and came to this community with now a career, you know. So everybody that moves around here, I get to know.
So you're a real homegirl.
So I'm a real Bladensburger, that's what you want to call it. So when it comes down to that, let's say, you know, for whatever issue, I'm pulling you over, and like you said, it's a perception. You have a tattoos, I don't know who you are and stuff like that. You know, first thing I do to kind of not tense the whole situation up, for me, I'll crack a joke in there, here or there, you know what I mean? That thing, my biggest thing is the way your attitude goes with me, or how my attitude goes with you, plays a long role in this. You know, it could be just a tag light. It can be maybe you're driving without a license or anything in that. You know, I'm not here to harm you. I'm not here to break you in any type of way. Hey, you know, by anything, let's try to, what you're trying to do to get your license, or, you know, hey, baby, I can cut you a break this time, but you go get your life first, or something. I just have somebody come pick you up. It goes a long way, like, the attitude, you know, that plays a big role, and a lot of people don't see it. I'm not gonna be a police officer here to harm anybody. You know, the biggest thing here is to keep everybody safe on both sides, the driver's side and the police officer side.
Great. I appreciate that response. And I can second what this young lady said about Bladensburg Police Department, and they have shown, you guys have shown yourself to be very involved in the community. Bladensburg is a smaller community, but we're on the border of DC. So we are connected to the DMV in every way. This is, Kenilworth Avenue is right across the street. This is DC basically. So there is an interaction that you have with people that come from the suburbs and from the city. And this is the middle ground between the two. And so you do have a tough job, especially when you're dealing with a community that is very diverse. Bladensburg has changed over the last 50 years. It's more the ethnicities here are more diverse, but it's also more brown. And so you guys can be a police force that is a liaison or bridging the gap, so to speak, even between other police forces. Mm-hmm. My question is, though, when you see an instance like George Floyd, right? That was terrible to see something like that. But then you have a confusing situation like Breonna Taylor. What do you do in that type of situation? That could happen in Bladensburg. What would you do to rectify the relationship if you've garnered this great relationship with the community and then you have an instance like that? It can easily be fractured. What would you do in a situation like that if you had a George Floyd or a Breonna Taylor situation in Bladensburg? How would you handle that?
So I'll answer that. So the first thing we want to do is be as transparent with the community as we can, right? We don't want to hide anything from the community. We want to get out in front of the public immediately and tell the facts that we know them without compromising the investigation. But we have to get out and let the public know. And my staff know that that being transparent on the onset versus being, later, trying to come out and make a statement. People ask, a lot of times, they want to see our body cameras. Yeah. Since I've been chief, I have no problem showing our body camera video because we want to give both sides of it. Like, we don't want to have the appearance of trying to cover anything up or give someone a perception that we're trying to hide and cover up for one another. So if the situation, God forbid if it does, but if it did happen here, the most important thing that we could do is be upfront and honest and transparent with the public. Mm-hmm. And we will have meetings with, just sort of like what we're having today. So having that communication with our community. So on the other side of that, you have the relationship. So our community do know the police. Mm-hmm. They know that if something happens, they know the officers here. We're small enough that most of the community know the officers. And so if something like, catastrophic like that happen, unfortunately, we will be out there and hopefully we will have the public to be patient enough to let us work through this investigation. And we're going to be transparent. We're going to have contacts with our mayor, with our town administrator, with our community leaders, our faith base. The one thing we don't want them to do is make their own narrative about what happened. Because if you don't make a statement, especially as a chief of police, if you don't get out in front and say something, then they're going to make their own statement. And then now you on the recovery now instead of being proactive and coming out and state the facts that you know what happened. And then hopefully the community will have enough patience to let you work through the investigation, and then you update them as the investigation progresses.
Great. I want to transition a little bit, but before we do that, I want to lay down one more important question. It's kind of basic, but we know there's no such thing as a perfect police department, mm-hmm. right? And so every police department, I do this as a clergy in the church. We will have some type of forum or administrative meeting, and basically it is an outlook of how the church is actually performed. And it's not just theologically based, it's community based. Mm-hmm. And we want to see the pros and cons of what we're proactively doing and then what we're not doing effectively. And since we know Bladensburg has done a wonderful job in having relationships with the community, but there are things that do need to be modified. Do you have anything currently planned that could communicate to the community that you're making adjustments maybe to certain policies, procedures, community activism? I think this right here is one big step as well. But is there anything else in the works from BPD that would communicate to the community that we are getting ahead of this? Is there anything that you can share with us? And then before you do that, Chief, I just want to let everybody know that's tuning in. We're going to have someone from the audience give their perspective of what it's like being in this community and the policing in this community. So we do want to hear from them as well. And while that young man is speaking, I'm going to go back and look and see if we have any questions from Facebook Live. Okay. And then we will present those as well. So back to you, Chief, if you want to answer that, and whoever else on the panel about the modifications that's happening right now in Bladensburg.
So I'll tell you, yes, we are in the process of rebuilding and restructuring, reorganizing our police department, and that starts with the leadership at the top. So that comes down to recruitment, that comes down to training. So we have, we're going from, no pun intended, but the Stone Age to 21st century policing. Okay. And I would say that, I am a proponent of 21st century policing model. I had an opportunity to go down to the White House on the previous administration and learn from the people who actually drafted that policy. So we have implemented that into our policies now. Right after George Floyd death or murder, and on May 25th, I instantly put out a community statement denouncing the murder of George Floyd, and I stood with my colleagues across the country that his death should have never occurred. So as a result of watching that video that we saw, I also on June 8th implemented in our department a duty to intervene. Yes. So we did have a clause already in the policy, but I actually enhanced it. Now they made so every officer is now accountable for the other officer when they come out to a scene. And it doesn't have to be physical, it can be verbal. We see an officer saying something that they shouldn't say. So in addition to that, we also, I'm a huge proponent of training. So your best officers are your best trained officers. So we just partnered with Police One. So we do have a training coordinator appointed Acting Corporal Thompson as our training coordinator for the department. So what he does now, he's required now to give roll call training every week. There's a new training that we assign to our officers. These trainings are recognized nationally, but most importantly, throughout the state. So each year, police officers, to maintain our certification, we have to go through what they call in-service training. So now these trainers that we have now, we don't have to go outside to get these trainings because we want training that's tailored towards our community. Okay. So it may be de-escalation, it may be mental illness. So I want our officers to go out to be able to address situations intelligently, have the skill set to go out and mitigate situations. So in addition to all of that, we also check one another. So I'm also I hired Lieutenant Silvers. We want to make sure that if our officers, you said it earlier, we're not perfect. So when we mess up, my officers are going to be held accountable. So that's why I hired Lieutenant Silvers. He has a robust background in internal affairs. So he will, and he's been doing a great job since he came on board. As a chief, I want to hire the best people. So now, since I've been here, also the hiring process. Everybody that I hire, they come and sit down with me. I have a couple new officers in here now that I hire. Because when I introduce them to the community, you can rest assured they have already had an interview with me. And they need to understand what our mission and our views are with the community. So we have really stepped it up.
So thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I just pulled up our training list. I was going to get ready to say I'm Acting Corporal Thompson with Bladensburg. So we've tailored a training schedule for this year to include stuff as emotional and psychological disorders, cultural awareness, civil rights, conflict and dispute resolution, ethics in law enforcement, and de-escalation and minimizing use of force. We are also going to attend anti-bias training. And we're going to attend a course for developing effective communication skills between the public.
So important because time and time again, we've seen negative interactions with the mentally ill, and it's led to unnecessary death. We don't want to place all of the blame on the responding officers. That's a very delicate and difficult situation to deal with because you're not there to be a psychologist, right? You're not a counseling psychologist or a therapist, so you can't immediately determine or dictate what that person's illness is. And so training is vital for responding to those types of situations. Nudge that guy next to you because his microphone has no work on it. So elaborate on that. I know there's a difficulty with. I just really think perception is a really big issue from both sides of the spectrum, right? The community and the police. What do you think has been the most difficult thing for you to do in policing with the community? Is it not being aware of what's happening on the scene? Is it fear? Is it being overzealous? What's the major issue that you think happens with the everyday police officer in the community?
I'm Officer Tanksley. I'm a part of the community action team with Bladensburg Police Department. Actually, the answer to that, I think, is the not being able to help. For me, going in and seeing their situations of these families, especially in the current conditions and the current events that we're facing, being able to go in and see someone live in a situation and not be able to help as much as you want to do, as much as you care, we still have to look at our safety. We have to look at those concerns. So for me, going into a home and seeing how I could be of assistance to them, I think that's the most effective to me, but trying to be able to utilize every resource possible that we have so that we can help every family that we can. And I think that it starts with our approach, like everyone here on the panel been saying. I mean, going in unbiased, and just making sure that we approach every situation, every call, every community matter professional. Yeah. And giving it the true professional treatment that's required of us. So for me, going in and not being able to help enough or making sure that I did enough to be able to nudge that family at least towards where they need to be going, I guess that's the most hurtful thing to me, put it that way.
That's great to hear because it is about implementing law and order, and policing is also communicative in how you interact, but it's also servanthood. It really is. You are serving the community to protect and serve, and so sometimes that aspect is missing. So if you can look at a person's situation and see that they're in dire straits and want to help, then that's a part of your service. There's only so much that you can do, but the fact that you care, we might see that later on act itself out, right? Because you might revisit that same individual in the community and be able to do something for them. Yes, sir.
So, Pastor, on that note, and piggybacking off him, with the people in crisis, we're also looking at other less lethal options. The chief is looking. We've submitted some things to the chief, so we're looking at less lethal options in order to get these people under control, to get them to the hospital or get them the help that they need without any type of lethal force, and that's a key also. Your loved one is out there and he's having a mental crisis issue. The last thing you want is the police pulling guns, and so we're looking at less lethal options to help these people to get the help that they're going to need at a hospital, a mental facility, or a lot of people just don't take their meds because they can't afford it.
Right.
So, like I said, we're looking at options to get these people the help they need.
And I'm glad you said that. That is absolutely important. Tasers, OC spray, all of those things. I mean, they're uncomfortable, but they won't kill you.
We're actually looking at something else right now that's in the works that basically wraps the person up.
Okay.
So it's called a bowler wrap.
Okay.
So that actually takes a lot of the not going to say injury out of it, because there's always a chance of injury anytime you deploy something. But it would be, it's another less lethal option that we have that we can utilize to get the people that need the help they need with the less force necessary.
That's great. I'm sorry, I got to do this real quick. Just give me a little grace to make a little modification. Communication with the other first responders is also important. One of the biggest issues that was happening in major cities, like our sister said, was when you have a larger population, it's hard to serve everyone. And so in Los Angeles, California, and in Chicago, Illinois, one of the issues was the response from the EMTs getting to some of those victims, and maybe they expire prematurely. And so communication with how to respond in a timely manner, and that effectiveness. Are you guys currently, because I know across the street we got everybody. We got the fire department, we got the mayor's office, we got the police headquarters, we got all that stuff. So are you guys in communication with first responders, EMT, fire? How is that whole relationship in Bladensburg?
So I can tell you that Chief Dave Sumner and we communicate regularly. When we need supplies, we need resources, but even more when there is something going on in town, and we feel that we need them, we can call him and he will send his resources down to us.
Okay.
So we have a very good working relationship with our fire department, and he and I also discuss in the future, once they're having some renovations done in their building, to start doing some cross-line training.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing some cross training with the fire department, because they are our first responders as well. And you're right, spot on, that we have to have a good working relationship with our other partners out here, first responders. But even so, this is called the port towns. So we also work with other officers around here. So one of our initiatives that we want to get started here is to train officers, because we all have to, yes, the county is around us, they're around us. However, who's going to get here first? It's going to be these municipalities that's going to be the first responders. So again, we're going back to the training, and we have to work collectively and collaboratively to solve crime and solve crises and things like that. So that is one of the things that we're doing. We're definitely keeping that communication going.
That's great.
And we're also doing, I believe the chief authorized, and we have them IFAC kits. So basically they're first aid kits. They have a tourniquet, they have an occlusive bandage in them, they have a chest seal, they have gauze, they have rubber gloves. So basically everything you need to basically save somebody's life right at the moment that they need it. One of our officers a couple weeks ago deployed his tourniquet on Gallatin Street for a guy that got shot in the leg with a shotgun and probably saved his life. I'm a TAC med instructor, and with Acting Corporal Thompson, he sent my lesson plan up to MPTC. They approved it for us to teach. So probably next week we're going to start the in-service training, and those IFAC kits will be issued out, and they will be in cruisers. They'll be put on the back of the passenger headrest uniformly, so everybody knows where they are. So if I got to go to your cruiser to save his life, I know where that kid is.
Great. And on a larger
Or
scale,
even a citizen's life. I know where that kid. I'm going to grab that kid, do what I got to do till the ambulance gets there. So.
I was going to say, on a larger scale, that's PPE for you guys. And that's also a part of this new narrative, and that's important. That you guys have that equipment at hand to be able to service the community once again, because that is life-saving materials and tactics that you're going to need, especially in this ever-increasingly violent, we can say, times that we're living in. We just want to be as well prepared and as open and transparent as possible.
So,
for all of those who, go ahead.
So I was just going to expand on what the chief and lieutenant have said. Right now we're working on multiple different training programs. We have such a good relationship with our community that I would like for other agencies to come to us for training, so that way they come to us when they want, such as TACMed or Narcan or anything that could possibly save another individual. That being said, we are starting our new training program. We're starting the new TACMED instructor so that we can provide training if the scene is not safe for the fire department to arrive, that we can try to do everything in our power to save a life.
And you know, and I can say this, I live a little bit further out in PG, but I'm in this community, I pastor in this community. I'm just proud to be in this community because I have never seen, and I've lived everywhere, Seattle, LA, Dallas, New York, everywhere. I have never seen a community that's so involved so quick. It's just not a bunch of talking, it's action. There are other cities and counties that are proactively doing something to better create alliances between the police department and the community, but to be a part of it, to actively be a part of it, to see what's happening behind the scenes, to have open communication where I can call the mayor, I can call the chief of police and get them on the phone and they're receptive, they shoot out ideas. That is very positive because I've had experiences that weren't so great with the police. And so the narrative in my mind changes when you see these types of interactions. Yeah, you have to be rational and you have to be logical and deal with truth and facts, but you don't always run up against that. But to see that someone is willing to open up themselves to not only hear what the community is saying, but to proactively do something about it, I mean, that speaks louder than, you know, people putting up, you know, hashtags and things of that nature. So I just would like to say that that's positive, and it just makes me, you know, proud to be a part of the community of Bladensburg. But I do want to hear, because of COVID-19, we have restricted the amount of people that we want to have here. We've obviously had someone here from the community, but we have someone in the audience, and I want this gentleman to come up right here and introduce himself and just briefly give us a little bit of his take on policing and the community, and then I'm gonna go look for some Facebook Live questions.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Zack. I just want to talk a little bit about my outlook on, you know, Bladensburg, the police, and the community. Because I can speak from both sides. I can speak from the side, you know, where I have good relationships and personal relationships with some of these officers. You know, and a lot of them are good, heartfelt. They do their jobs. You know, they care about you. You know, they want to help. You know, some of them, they're not like everybody. All the officers are not like some of these good guys up here. You know, Chief Collington, Corporal Ramirez, Corporal Brown, and Officer Tanksley. You know, from a personal perspective, you know, I've been talking about the Decatur Police Department. You know, that's how I feel. You know, that's my personal opinion. You know, and I don't think it's right. You know, I'm young, I'm black, I'm a young man. And you may think I'm up here, kind of a little rough, you know, but I have a good heart. I'm a family man. And you know, I just wish more officers would like a lot of these good guys up here. And you know, when it really hits home, when the target affects your family, or when you feel like, you know, oh, I may not come home tonight, or I may not get to see my family tomorrow because I got put over by the police. And that's how I feel sometimes. I mean, it's in the world, it's in the natural world, like, we don't, it's a such thing as treat people how you want to be treated. And that goes a long way. I've been told that in kindergarten, a lot of us been told that in grade school, you know. Respect is given, it's earned, not given. And you know, some officers don't respect you. Some Bladensburg officers are very aggressive, you know. And like I said, everybody's not like these. Everybody up here, a lot of these guys are probably good guys, you know. But everybody's not like that. And that's just my output on police. And it's not just in Bladensburg, it's happening everywhere. Because if the good outweighed the bad, we wouldn't be having the problems that we're having in the world today. But the bad outweighs the good. And that's not good, and it's not fair. And what is a young black man like me supposed to do when I feel like I can't trust the police? And should I call them, you know, or should I not call them because they might handle the situation a little not how they're supposed to handle it, a little different? You know, I never know what to do, but I do trust some officers, but it goes on, like I said, respect goes a long way. And you have to give it to give it. And like Corporal Ramirez said, it's about when you first encounter the officer, their attitude, your attitude. That first encounter, that first friction, sets the whole mood for the whole relationship. And that's what a lot of people don't. But that's when the officer comes up to your window and real aggressive, be like, okay, well, it might scare you, it might startle you, otherwise the officer coming up and say, hey, how you doing? What's your problem? Things like that. It's about approach. And all officers don't take that fair, that respectful approach. And that's the only problem I have. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate that, brother. I think that was a fair assessment, and I think he said some things that were key. Obviously, what we did, we picked the good guys here, so we didn't do a good job getting the panel. We should have had like half good, half bad. But since we got the good guys here, one of the things that he mentioned that I think is important for us to address is if there is a bad seed, what do you do to rectify that? And let me also speak from experience. In the Black community, it's very difficult to voice a complaint about an officer and then proactively see something happen. And a lot of the communication with the community is, what's the point of me going and writing an officer up or voicing it? They're not going to do anything. It's like calling the police about my bike being stolen. They're not going to find my bike. What are the statistics about getting bikes back? Okay, so it's one of those things where you don't see the probability in it. What do you do to address his issue? His issue is there are some out there who have aggressive tactics, and what can communities of color, how can you make them feel comfortable with communicating with the police and seeing something be done? And does Bladensburg have a track record of complaints against officers? I'm pretty sure you do. And how does that whole thing work?
You want to talk about it?
So since I've been here, I've been here about 2 weeks. I started looking at the internal affairs complaints and investigations and the way they were handled in the past. I have since changed that to have a more organized system and a more thorough system. All complaints get investigated. If you put a complaint against police practices in, it will be investigated. We have body cams. Body cams don't lie. And we don't look at just the one officer's body cam. We look at everybody on the scene. I pulled a CAD sheet, everybody's cam on the scene I look at. If it's discourtesy, use of language, a lot of times, like this gentleman said here, the way, it could be an aggressive, hey, yo, and sometimes it may just be, hey man, tone it down. If you get a complaint, this gentleman was, hey, they come up, the first perception is the biggest thing. In 31 years, I've always came up, I've given, hey man, how you doing? Just let you know, your tail light's out. You got your license and registration on, you'll be on your way in a minute. I'm not saying by any stretch that all officers are good. You have bad plumbers, you have bad electricians. A bad plumber, a bad electrician gets in a fight in a bar, it's not on the news. An officer gets in a fight, or does something not even criminal, and it makes the news.
A bad preacher would make the news too.
Yes. So I don't want that is a big misconception with the public. Oh, I'm going to file this complaint and nothing's going to happen. I will tell you up front that complaint thoroughly gets investigated. I was an internal affairs sergeant in Prince George's County for 2 years. I investigated every complaint that I got on my desk. Some were unfounded. Some were just the guy was mad because he got locked up. Some were legitimate complaints. Of those legitimate complaints, that officer was dealt with either with a reprimand, loss of days, take money from them, suspension. I take it seriously because an interaction like that makes distrust in the community. And we don't want that. We're trying to get the community back. So by all means, if you think that something happened to you, you were mistreated, you file that complaint, it will be investigated.
And that's a difficult situation to navigate because it's a rarity to see that translate in the community. Somebody files a complaint and to see, optics are everything, right? It's to see something happen. There's also a narrative about the police nationwide being a buddy system, like the good old boy club. And, we don't turn in our own and things that have been
So
done.
if I could just cut you off for 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So back in the day, absolutely. I would say back in the 60s and 70s, lower 80s, you had that. That's no more. You have people out here, I mean, you got college educated people that are police now. You have people like me I'm a 5th generation police. I take policing very seriously. And for somebody to go out there and do something stupid, something illegal, or treat somebody unfairly just based on their race, color, or origin, that's totally not right. And that person needs to be dealt with because that one person out of 800,000 police officers is going to be the one that tarnishes the badge that we wear every day.
Right.
That needs to be dealt with and needs to be dealt with swiftly. That person needs to be taken off the street or he needs retraining. Whatever needs to be done, it's got to be done. And when you file your complaint, again, we look at body cams, we bring in the complainant, I get a recorded statement from you. I look at the body cam to make sure, everything coincides. And if there's discipline that needs to be done, absolutely, he's going to be disciplined. And you will get a letter with the findings.
Okay, now I have a really, really important question.
Before we get to that, can I just piggyback off that a little bit? So another thing that we do, and I've spoken with the mayor and council about, is when you talk about transparency, what we have not been doing in Bladensburg is what we're going to start doing is what they call comp stat. So what that is the data-driven analysis. It can include crime as well as complaints. So I will be publishing what you just said, someone files a complaint, they never hear about it. So when I met with the lieutenant, and my announcement was heavily recruiting for internal affairs experience. And I met with the lieutenant, and he and I sat down, and we went through the whole IA internal affairs complaints. So we have restructured the way that they have filed away. But on top of that, now every time a complaint is filed, a letter is automatically sent to the complainant. Hey, and I send it.
So they get a response back from that. Okay.
Yes, that we have received your complaint and it has been investigated. You'll be contacted by our internal affairs Lieutenant Silvers. So they get that now.
It's like a case number, they can call back.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So we want to be transparent up front. But when we do our comp stat, now the community would know how many complaints we received in a year. What were the outcomes of those complaints? So that will come out now in our information, our communication with the community at our council meetings. So now there's no more, I filed a complaint, never heard about it. I'll tell you how many complaints we have. The numbers don't lie. So we will put the numbers out and be transparent. We'll have a conversation about them. Okay. So that's what we want to do to continue to build that trust with the community. Let them know, like this gentleman said, when he filed a complaint, I want to know what's going to happen. I want to know if this officer is still on the force or not. So we will, be more transparent now moving forward. And like I said, Lieutenant Silvers and I, we just met today on some internal affairs issues. And, we're going forward, we're building it, and we're going to make it the best that it can be so that all officers know we're creating a matrix. So officers know, we could, develop a continuum. So officers will know now that we're consistent. You're not picking on me and I'm not picking on, no, there's going to be some consistency in how we administer punishment and discipline.
I have one quick question. I know I'm simply a panelist, but I wanted to ask particularly for Lieutenant Silver. So I wanted to address your answer to one of the questions about holding like police officers accountable, like with suspension and things like that. But have they ever been criminally charged? Like
Yes.
with
If they're, yes, absolutely. We have an ethics squad in the state's attorney's office that we work with. And if I feel that there is a criminal issue going on, then that turns that internal affairs into now a criminal indictment. So we will forward that to the state's attorney's office and let them look at it to see if they think there's enough there for a criminal indictment. If there's enough there for a criminal indictment, absolutely it goes forward. And just to let you know, Chief's talking about a matrix. One of the departments I used to work for did not have a matrix, which caused a huge problem. So whether I do something or you do something, whether black, white, Hispanic, male, female, it doesn't matter. It's like discipline across the board. That's what the matrix is for. Again, like the chief said, oh, you're picking on, no, I'm not picking on you. Johnny Smith did the same thing you did. He got the same thing you did. So that way there's no appeal process, or they have nothing to, you see a lot of times cops get fired. They go to the FOP and they grieve it or they appeal it. So a lot of times what these attorneys will do is they'll pull the internal affairs folders, because now they're public record. I think 5 years ago they made a public record. And they'll say, oh, well, you fired my client, but you did this to my client, or to the other client. He didn't get fired.
And that's what reverse to. Okay.
So then you have an issue. The matrix system, it gets rid of all that.
Okay.
It's like discipline for everybody.
Can I say something real quick before Corporal Thompson? Were you getting ready to say something?
Yeah.
Can I just say something real quick? Because it's not a new issue, it's a current issue, and it's a reoccurring issue. When we talk about police reform, the issue is discipline really doesn't ensue until it's made public, right? It's, well, how long does it take an officer to get arrested? Or what is the matrix for using deadly force? Because it seems to be different in St. Louis than it does in Baltimore, right? Like, why isn't there a general matrix? Because the outcry is, it's a lot of bloodshed that the community feels like is unnecessary, even though it might be legal. Should the law change? I think that's the question as well.
So I can actually, I'll answer two parts.
Okay.
I wanted to build off of what they said and what you said. It's important to have your voice heard. You should always, if you feel that you need to file a complaint, because it's going to come back to me as training. Do I need to change our training tactics to better suit the community? Think of it like if you go to a restaurant, you always have those forms that say, how was the service? And unless they get feedback from the community, we're never going to know if we need to change our training. And it's important. I know there's a lot of mistrust. I want you to be able to call us. I want you to be able to call me without having to worry about any of that. So on the other side of it is, for the, sorry.
You were trying to do Lieutenant's point?
Yeah. So that was built off of theirs. No, that was built off of theirs. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So additionally, the chief and I just had a conversation about this, ironically, this afternoon. So in the fire department, if you're a paid fireman, you have what's called national qualifications, okay? So it's a standard across the United States for firemen. So if you get national calls in a training program, you can go to another state and be a fireman because you're nationally qualified. In police work, we don't have that. So we're very fortunate in the DC metropolitan area, Virginia, that we have one of the best police trainings, probably in the country, over here on the East Coast. We have different training versus Louisville, Kentucky. You saw it in Minneapolis. In their policies and procedures, they actually had a chokehold.
Exactly.
We do not. We were talking about this today, that there should be a national standard for police training and police uses of force across the country. That way there is no different from Bladensburg Police Department to LAPD to Podunk, Pennsylvania, wherever you're at, there's a national standard for one, training, and two, for the use of force continuum. And that will take a lot of the guesswork out of what we do. And, well, why is this police department doing this, but the police department's not? And, why is this in their rules and regs, but it's not in their rules and regs over here? It's going to be it would be a standard across the board, and I think that's something that they would have to do at the, in Washington.
Is there so this becomes political, and I think that's important. Is there, for those who are naive and have no idea if we're moving towards that uniform matrix, the uniformity with the badge, are we moving towards that direction where we're going to have some similar matrix where across the country, we don't have to worry about the Eric Garner situation in New York where you have a chokehold, but then here at Bladensburg, that's hands off. We're not doing that. Are we moving towards that? And is that what we're seeing
in the climate
movement or no?
Well, in the climate today, with all of the incidents we've had in such a short period of time, in my 31 years, I can't remember. I was around for the Rodney King incident, and then we didn't have anything for quite a while. We're getting incidents now, they're almost back to back. So I believe that the powers to be in Washington, and we have a thing called PERF. That it's chiefs and stuff, and they bring subject matter experts in, and hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I believe we're going to start moving towards that, just because of the climate. Because again, you have questions. Well, why does Bladensburg do this, and LAPD does this? And I think that's where I'm not going to say mistrust of the community, because you have certain police departments doing one thing, you have certain police departments doing another thing. It's right here, it's wrong here. So I believe in the next probably 5 or 10 years, we're going to have a national standard for training and use of force in police.
Yeah. Can I just jump in a little bit? Now, the other part of that is each state laws varies from state to state. So trying to get a unified national standard will be very difficult because of the different laws within the respective states. But I do tell, and you can have all the policies that you want, but if your officers aren't reading your policies, they're going out here doing what they believe is right. Right? So I'll tell you that with what we're doing now in Bladensburg is I've instructed all supervisors to read the general order every roll call, right? And then when you get to the end, start over again. Because when you walk out of that door, you should be proficient in doing your job, right? And the only way you're going to get proficient in doing your job is to know what your job is. So that is another thing that we're doing here in Bladensburg. We're doing roll call training, and my officers, we have discussions. And I tell them, I remember coming up through the ranks. I've been in law enforcement now going on 25 years. So I remember coming up through the rank. I didn't skip not one rank. So when I was a new boot on the ground, a new officer, it was incumbent upon me to learn my general orders, because I'm either going to get fired or I'm going to go to jail or get somebody hurt or get myself hurt. So I had to start reading, and I learned to do that early on the job, and it has helped me tremendously. When I go out, I know what I'm talking about, because we're talking about building trust again. Sometimes, because our general orders are online, it's bad when a resident or a citizen or whoever you have in the country, they know your general orders better than you, right? That's embarrassing, right? So what we're doing now, again, we are strengthening the knowledge of our officers by implementing training and having them read the general orders, so they do become proficient in doing their job.
I think that's very important. I think diversity is important. You see uniformity happening in certain areas of the public workspace, like active threat training. It's kind of becoming a standard all around the board. And so even though laws vary from state to state, there are some things that are standard because of the times that you live in. So something like active threat becomes something that even a government employee has to be involved in, just because of the times. And so I do think there is a leaning towards a general uniformity. It might not necessarily be a specific police policy, but I do think there are some things that will obviously change. Well, I appreciate you guys just being here for this forum. I want to move on for time's sake. It says here in our agenda that we have live scenarios with commentary. We do not have that? Okay. All right. Well, at this time, I want to ask, does anybody else have any last comments, anything that they want to address to the public before I turn it back over to Mayor James for her last acknowledgement?
I have like one question. Again, I'm sorry.
You asking me? this ain't, no.
But like, do you guys have a website or a source where you have all of your policies and protocols?
Yes. If you go to the Town of Bladensburg webpage and then go to police, and then you'll see there where you can see the all of our general orders are posted up online. Now, I tell you, we are in the process of updating those policies, but the policies are there where you can read now. And then one thing I do want to just say that, one, thank you, Pastor. You did a fantastic job, and thank you again for opening up your church today. Because, you know, if we don't work together, you know, we can't succeed. And I always tell people that if you don't have the trust of your community leaders, if you don't have the trust of your mayor and council, if you don't have the trust of your colleagues, you can't survive in this profession. So trust is first and foremost with me, and the preservation of life. So I just want to make sure that our community stays solid. When we go out, I want people to always, I see the comments that people send, you know, thank you Bladensburg, thank you Bladensburg. That's why we are heavily involved, and I get so many compliments from my colleagues around the police in Prince George's County and outside of how happy they are, how much they appreciate, how much they respect what we're doing here in the town of Bladensburg. I tell them, we might be small, but we mighty. You know, we have a good leadership from our mayor and council, and then the people that we serve with. We iron sharpens iron. So we all work together. They always say, hey, Chief, we think, no, I tell them all the time, publicly and privately, how much I appreciate them ever since I've been here in Bladensburg. And again, thank you, and thank our community for chiming in with us to be part of this discussion.
Yeah, I want to say, before she asks another question, I just want to say that, like I said, I was elated when I first came here, and immediately Mayor James reached out and developed a relationship, and that spoke volumes to me. And then the police department followed right behind. And after the unfortunate George Floyd incident, the community got together and peacefully marched and involved themselves with the community in real activism, which the key word there is activity. And so it was less dialogue. This is important and it's needed, but the boots on the ground is essential. And so to me, it was refreshing to know that there is someone in the community, leaders, because everything starts from the head and it trickles down, that the administrative board at Bladensburg, the leaders here, are doing so much in the midst of a pandemic. It is amazing. It is refreshing, and I am just excited and proud to be a part of just this community. And so I want to appreciate each and every single one of you for participating in this panel and allowing yourselves to dialogue with some very tough questions, scenarios, and incidents. This is a very touchy subject and a sensitive time. And so there are a lot of people who aren't willing to have that open dialogue. But I appreciate you all being a part of this dialogue and allowing us to gather here today for such a wonderful, wonderful event that I think will communicate volumes not only to Bladensburg, but this will get pushed out to other surrounding communities. And hopefully that spearheads them doing something. So, and thank you. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor James. Thank you guys very much for allowing me to be part of it.
Well, thank you again, Pastor Smith, for opening the doors of your church to the community for probably 1,000 times since we met earlier this year. I want to thank our audience for tuning in. Of course, I want to thank our awesome staff for being here, and my wonderful, adopted mother, Vivian, who I watched grow up since she was in elementary school. And so to see her articulating the perspectives of young people and just having honest dialogue and not being afraid to speak up, on behalf of the youth, I appreciate your participation. I really appreciate you stepping up here and sharing your experience, because that's the whole point of tonight. We're not perfect, none of us are. And so we need to be in a place where we can have honest communication to say, this happened to me and it was not right. And I don't want to see it happen again. But what I really respect about you is the fact that you didn't get stuck on what didn't go well with negative police encounters. You also said, but I also recognize positive police encounters. People who care about me, they're not doing this job just because they're in need of a paycheck. They care about this community, and they want to help you personally succeed. So I appreciate you being honest about what didn't work, but also sharing a testimonial about what did work and what was successful. And I hope that we can learn from that and really take time to put efforts into fixing what isn't right in our community. Like I said, we're not perfect, but we're going to do our best to get close while we're here. And that can only come from working together with our young people, with our law enforcement officers, with our community stakeholders, and also with our residents. So on behalf of the council and community, I want to thank you all again for being a part of this. We're going to close it out, but we will be back again. We'll notify you when we can get this together. And next time we're going to change it up. So thanks for tuning in. Everyone have a good night, and God bless you. Please stay safe out there. Thank you.